typical person who needs a transplant and what they're going through on the wait list, it's not the same for transplant hepatologists because probably just have, you know, everybody's different situations.
Getting a message that they cannot hear. Online, can you hear us if we utilize this microphone? We're getting a message that people online cannot hear.
We can hear you.
Don't use this one. Okay, I'm going to be over here. Okay. All right, so I'm sure that you feel this way a little bit, that the process of transplantation feels a little bit like there's all these hurdles that you have to overcome. So, you know, on the left, I always think about transplant the same way for our recipients. Number one, do you need a liver transplant? Let's talk about the risks and benefits of that surgery. Let's make sure this is the right thing for you. If we really think that you do, then we move forward with answering the question, is it safe? So that 2-day evaluation, sometimes you have pending items, sometimes we're trying to answer more questions. And then once you're actually waitlisted, how are you going to get a transplant? And that's what we're going to focus on today, is this how part. And why is this even an issue? You know, there is still, unfortunately, an organ shortage in this country. There are still, even though we're doing more and more transplants every year, there are more and more people that are added to the wait list every year. And so that gap between the people that get transplants but the ones that need it just remains the same over time. About 1 in 8 people die or become too sick for a liver transplant every year. And so we want to be really proactive with this. Remember, which patients on the wait list are getting those liver offers first? It's the people with the highest MELD score. This is just a mandate in the United States of America. Organs where people have passed away, their organs, their deceased organs, those go to the highest MELD score first, which symbolizes the sickest patient first. Livers do not go to people based on the time that you've been on the wait list, right? So we think the higher the MELD, the sicker the patient, but I'm sure a lot of you in this room know MELD score is not perfect. You've probably talked to your transplant hepatologist about why do you need a transplant? Maybe you need it and we don't feel like your MELD is actually representative of how sick you are. These are the variables that go into it, those lab scores, but a lot of the time we'll be sitting talking to you and saying, well, you know, you have ascites and that doesn't seem to be bumping up your MELD score as much as we would expect. And in the meantime, you know, if you're on the wait list waiting for an organ transplantation, there's risk to that. So we said 1 in 8 people really don't make it to get that transplant. And I'll just emphasize this. Of course, the higher the MELD score, so in the 30s, the more risk of dying on the wait list. But even if you have a MELD score around 15, you have a risk of 15% of passing away in that first year on the wait list. And so that's what we want to eliminate. That's really what we want to eliminate. And you can see over here, even that though that percentage is lowest in the low MELD patients, they're representing the largest absolute number of deaths on the wait list. And so this is what we want to really focus on. And you'll see here that when we look at the national, the group of people in the whole country on the wait list, nationally, these low MELD patients make up the majority. Okay, so how can we be more proactive? If there's this many people on the wait list, this many organs that become available, it goes to the highest MELD score first. We have to be proactive and creative to think of other ways. This picture is a picture from a commercial that was created a few years ago to educate the general population on the importance of living donation. It was this Get Out of Line commercial. And some people think of the wait list as a line where you're waiting in line. I would say it's more like you're waiting in a group of people. Those organs become available. They go to certain blood types, sizes, because those livers have to fit into people and be blood type compatible. But the idea here is that this living donor went and grabbed her recipient out of line and pulled that person out of line so that they didn't have to wait through our typical allocation process. And the beautiful thing about living donor liver transplant is it's so good for you. It is an amazing opportunity not only to get out off that wait list, to not wait in that group of people, but also the outcomes are just excellent. People who get a living donor liver transplant have amazingly just a new start at life. You can live 20 plus years after a living donor liver transplant. It's like a fresh start. And their survival is the same, if not better, than somebody who's getting a deceased donor transplant. How amazing is that? What is it? It's when a healthy person who's able to undergo an abdominal surgery comes forward, matches with you in the sense of blood type and size, and your entire liver is removed and a piece of their liver is given to you. That piece regenerates in you to be everything your body needs, and the piece that they're left with regenerates to be everything that their body needs. So it's an amazingly beautiful process, and it's really just an amazing organ that this is even possible. What are the benefits to you to getting a living donor liver transplant? It's the things that we said. You can get transplanted faster without waiting. It eliminates that risk of dying on the wait list. You get scheduled. We can kind of like work with you to make sure you're medically optimized so you're getting it at the best time possible. Those outcomes are excellent, like we said. And there are more incidences of biliary complications in a living donor liver transplant because the bile ducts are a bit smaller, but they don't affect overall survivals, and we can get through that. For the donor, of course, you want to make sure that your donor has a good experience, that they're as safe as possible. It's really hard to ask and put your story out there, but I'll tell you that donor outcomes are absolutely excellent. They have good long-term quality of life. There's no impairment to their life expectancy from donating to you. Of course, it's a major abdominal surgery. We want to be really careful with them and diligent, make sure we're not taking on additional risks, but their survival rates, 99.8%. We quote 1 in 500 might have a risk of death in the operating room. But as we're doing this robotically, as our experience grows in the country, that number keeps going down. So of course, it's a major surgery that we take seriously, but the outcomes are great. Most of the complications that donors experience are minor and easy to treat. There are a small percentage that require an intervention or a procedure. Most donors feel like themselves again by 2 to 3 months after donation. Most of that liver regeneration occurs in the first 6 weeks, but it continues for the full first year. And our donors really tell us that this was a great experience for them and they would want to donate again if they were given the opportunity. That's probably because the population is self-selected. So a donor never is pressured in any way by us to donate. So it's really a population that has said they really want to do this and they come and approach us. And I want you to know that you're at a place that has a history of excellence doing this. The first liver transplant by Startzel took place at the University of Colorado. The first adult-to-adult living donor liver transplant took place here. And a lot of those surgeons that were on that initial team are still here. So it's a really close team. We started doing the donor surgery robotically in 2023 and are offering that to really almost all of our donors unless there's some surgical reason that they don't think they can. Living donation comprises about 10 to 15% of all our liver transplants that take place here. And we really think this is the best option for all recipients. We want everyone to be thinking about it early and being proactive with this. And so what's our approach? So if you are approved to be on the wait list, you're waiting for an organ transplantation, we would like you to be looking for living donors and putting your story out there for living donation as early as possible, because we know that you're getting a healthy organ, getting off the wait list, and this is just the best thing for you. But at the same time, you're on that wait list and the surgeons are still looking for deceased donor transplants for you. So looking into living donor doesn't mean that we're not still looking for deceased donor transplants for you. We're doing both at the same time. And taking that combined approach, you'll see that our center, for that time to transplant for the people on the wait list, over 70% are transplanted in the first year compared to 56% nationally. And I think it's because we're taking that combined approach. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is how can we help you to make your transplant happen. And a lot of this is around being open to letting your story be shared. And so that's where we're going to go tonight. Jamie's going to talk to us next about the donor evaluation process. And then Kelly's really going to guide us through this about telling your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. My name is Jamie Chisak. I'm the Living Donor Coordinator for Liver, and I'm going to talk about this process from the donor perspective. So we know that you are obviously really worried about your donors stepping forward and wanting to make sure that we're taking very good care of them. So that is always our first priority, is making sure that this process is safe for the donor, making sure that their well-being, their thoughts and wishes are absolutely considered during this process. So first we'll kind of take an overall view of how we look at living donation, and then we'll break the steps down one by one. So the first thing that happens is a donor fills out a health history questionnaire. We start with some preliminary testing, which is just a blood draw for liver. We make it to a 2-day in-person evaluation. In selection committee, we review those results and make a decision. And if the individual is a good candidate for donation, then we work to schedule surgery and proceed with the donation itself. So if we start back at the beginning, who can be a living donor? Living donors must be between at least 18 years of age. We need to make sure that that we have adults stepping forward that are old enough to be able to provide informed consent. So we start with the age of 18, and typically our upper age limit is 57. Now, the reason for that is as we age, our bodies do get impacted. The ability to regenerate our liver just gets a little bit harder as we get older. But we do acknowledge that a lot of times biological age can be younger than chronological age. You know, if we have a really, really healthy 55-year-old, they may be biologically younger than a 45-year-old. So we tend to say that we go to the upper age limit of 57. However, if you only have one living donor, one potential living donor, and they might be 58, it's something we do consider. We want to take everybody into consideration on a case-by-case basis. Donors have to be in excellent physical and psychological health, have the capacity to understand the risks of surgery, and be willing to follow the recommendations that the team sets forth. So like I said, the first thing that happens is the potential donor candidate fills out a health history questionnaire. Now, this is the web address that we give everybody. We have these little business cards that flood our clinic. They're in every exam room. They're in the waiting room. And it's very simple. It just has the web address on there indicating that if you want to consider donation, this is where you start. It's a very thorough health history questionnaire from a medical, surgical, and a psychosocial standpoint that the potential candidate completes. And then I, as the donor coordinator, will review that for any absolute reason that a donor can't be considered. And those reasons are pretty few and far between. If there's no concerns there, then we start with just some non-fasting blood work. So we check liver function, we check a blood type, we do some other tests that are a little bit more specific to liver, and look to see if maybe you might be at increased risk for developing blood clots. Once those lab tests are reviewed, if those are within normal limits, then we see if the potential candidate is ready to take the next step and schedule a formal in-person evaluation here at the University of Colorado Hospital. Now, this evaluation feels very similar to what the recipients go through, where you're meeting the whole multidisciplinary team and going through all of the testing that we need to decide if donation is safe. So that's outlined here. We kind of look at evaluation as, yes, the time for us to decide if donation is safe for somebody, but it's also the time for a potential donor candidate to come to the hospital and get all the information they need to make an educated decision about donation. We never assume that somebody is ready to just go to the operating room once they're here for an evaluation. It's more of an information gathering time. So they first speak on the phone with an independent donor advocate. We are all donor advocates. We are a team that just work with the donors, but we do have someone who's outside the transplant team to help explain what the rights are of the donor, remind them that they don't have to do this. You meet with me as the coordinator. We go through the informed consent and talk about processes. A social worker is there to understand what your daily and home life is like, to see if there's, what we need to be thinking about from a support perspective after donation. Dr. Jackson meets with most of our living donor candidates to medically decide if somebody's a good candidate. She's looking for anything that would make this surgery higher risk for you, because we don't really want to accept risk above what is considered the baseline and acceptable risk for this surgery. You meet with a psychologist to just help us confirm that you can understand risk versus benefit, talk about a post-donation diet with a dietitian, and of course, meet a surgeon to see if there's any reason surgically you can't be considered. The testing, you get lots of labs drawn, EKG, chest x-ray. We do both a CT scan and an MRI on the donors. We're looking at the liver volume and the blood vessel anatomy with a CT scan, and then looking at the bile duct anatomy with an MRI. And then there might be some other testing just depending on certain risk factors that the donor has. So once we get the CT and the MRI, we have a group that creates a 3D model of the liver. And this model is what the surgeon will use to decide if it's anatomically safe to remove part of the liver. This creates a very reliable roadmap for the surgeon in the operating room. Now this picture, there's 3 here. They outline the 3 options for donation: a right lobe, a left lobe, or a small piece of a left lobe called the left lateral segment. When we're doing an adult to an adult live donor liver transplant, 9 times out of 10, we're talking about a right lobe, which is the one in pink on your left. And then the green that complements that is the left lobe. But you can see how the structures interact with each other. On the far right, my right-hand side or your right-hand side, you see I've labeled the bile duct, the portal vein, the hepatic artery. I don't have the hepatic vein here because it kind of takes over the whole picture. But, standard anatomy is you're born with one of everything. Everybody has one bile duct, portal vein, hepatic artery. But the reality is half of us are born with extra structures. Maybe a donor has 2 hepatic arteries or 2 bile ducts. And sometimes that's safe for the surgeon to still remove the lobe of the liver, but sometimes it's not. So we're looking at this from what is safe to remove from the donor and what is safe to put into the recipient. Now, once all of the testing is done, we come together as a team and we go through everything with a fine-tooth comb to see if there is any reason we shouldn't proceed with this donor. We kind of operate at the forefront of our brain every day as we remind donors often that you have the right to withdraw consent at any time. This isn't a surgery that they need to have. So the risk tolerance is different than if it's something that is going to save your life. Now, when we come to committee and we make a decision, that's often 3 different decisions. We could approve the donor and they're excited to move forward and we schedule surgery. We could decide that for some reason there is an increased risk to this donor and unfortunately we've had to deny them. And then we talk to them about championing for their recipient, which is kind of what the goal is here tonight. Third, though, we could say you're a really good donor candidate, but for one reason or another, maybe it's blood type or size of your liver, you just can't donate to your specific loved one. And when that happens, we put you on a list called Donor on the Wings. And we ask if you're willing to kind of sit off to the side and wait for another pair that we can set up a swap with. So if Joe wants to donate to his mom and his liver is too big for his mom, maybe there's another pair where that donor is a really good fit for Joe's mom and Joe is a really good fit for recipient number 2. So we will do a paired exchange. The result of that is that both recipients are getting transplanted, but with opposite donors. And this is something we kind of talk about more than once because it can be kind of confusing. As Dr. Jackson mentioned, we have transitioned to doing most of the donor hepatectomies robotically. Historically, this surgery is called what's an open hepatectomy, where there's a large midline incision for the donor. We haven't done an open hepatectomy in some time, although there could still be reasons that happens. Instead, this is done minimally invasive, where we have 4 teeny tiny laparoscopic incisions that flank the belly button and 1 inside the belly button, and then the liver is retrieved by a very small incision directly above the pubic bone, which you can see here. So we are one of the few centers in the entire country that perform this surgery minimally invasive, and it has huge benefits for the donor. So there's less risk for hernia, less pain, shorter hospital stay, less risk for or lessened constipation after surgery. So it really just means that donors are getting back to life much more quickly than they have historically. And what does recovery look like for these donors? There are a lot of factors. What lobe was removed? Removing the right lobe is a little bit bigger of a surgery than taking out the left lateral segment that goes to a baby listed at Children's Hospital. Was it an open surgery or a minimally invasive robotic surgery? Were there any issues after donation that we had to deal with? Does the donor have a labor-intensive job? If you work from home and you do administrative type work, that looks a little bit different than if you're a carpenter and you're on your feet for long hours and doing a lot of heavy lifting. So we talk about the specifics of what it looks like for a donor once we know more about what they're going to be approved for and what their circumstances are. But most donors really are getting back to work at least part-time, 4 to 6 weeks after surgery, and feel completely back to baseline somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks after surgery, which is really a big improvement from what we've seen historically. So life after donation, liver function returns to normal. That usually only takes about 4 to 6 weeks. And at that point, when the liver numbers are returning back to normal, it means the liver is largely regenerated. Now, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, it does continue to change and remodel at the cellular level a little bit over that entire first year. But really, by the time 4 to 6 weeks pass, it's largely regenerated. Liver donation does not impact liver function long term. So once your liver function gets back to normal, it's anticipated that you would have normal liver function for the rest of your life, meaning it's not impacted by the fact that you donated a piece of your liver. Donors are able to perform the same physical activities that they were engaging in before donation. And when they've done quality of life studies and they've polled donors on whether or not that they would donate again, 95% of donors surveyed that they were happy they did it and they would do it again. Now some donor myths. These are some of the questions I get quite a bit, so I thought we would throw this slide up there. The first one says, I cannot start the process because my blood type isn't the same as the recipient's. So the first thing I want to say is your blood type doesn't have to be the same. It just has to be compatible. So we can kind of walk through what that means for each individual person. But even if it's not a compatible blood type, we can talk about that paired exchange program that we just mentioned. Family members make better donor candidates. We don't have to match in liver transplant like they do in kidney transplant. So we're not looking at your HLA antigens and your eplet molecules and determining if you can match with your recipient. And so the only reason that statement could be true is a lot of times family members are more motivated to step forward and donate for a family member, but it doesn't make them a better donor candidate. My BMI puts me in an overweight category, so I cannot be considered for donation. I Googled this today. An overweight BMI actually starts at 25. And so BMI is a tool that we use, but it is not perfect. BMI is far below the BMI that we would consider for donation. And it doesn't give you fat mass versus muscle mass and take your body composition or the donor's body composition into account. So that is something we talk about on a case-by-case basis, but we don't want people to feel discouraged if they think they're overweight to be considered for donation. If I step forward for donation, my recipient will not be considered for a deceased donor transplant. Dr. Jackson discussed this. These two routes to transplant happen independent of each other. So we will work up living donors while the recipient is wait listed, and it's however we can get you transplanted first. I hear Dr. Jackson say all the time, the most dangerous place to be is the wait list. So even if you have a living donor scheduled and it's 6-8 weeks from now and you have a great deceased offer come through, then your team would encourage you to take that offer. My health insurance is billed for donor testing. We do require donors to carry health insurance, but we do not use that insurance or bill the insurance for anything related to the donor process. And the reason we require donors to carry health insurance is because we find a lot of incidental findings, things that we're not looking for when we work up a donor, and we want to know that they have access to care. But donors do not have any financial responsibility for anything medical that we do during the donor process. And that kind of leads me to the statement of, I cannot afford to donate. It's possible that this is true for somebody, but really there are a lot of resources out there to offset what we call the donor costs, which are travel, lodging, and lost wages. So there are two programs that we use primarily. Our social worker goes through these programs with every single potential donor candidate so that they can understand if there is any out-of-pocket expense to be a donor. The goal is always to get this to be completely cost neutral for the donor. Other resources we have available, donor mentors. We have prior donors who, one you'll hear from tonight, that love to be a resource for individuals considering the process and are available before donation, during the donation process, and afterwards. And these are just a picture of some of our donor and recipient pairs. I always just like to say thank you to all of the donors because we wouldn't be here without them, and they make this whole thing possible for us. And are we sending the slides out or making them available? Okay, because every one of these is a really good resource for a potential donor candidate, and we can kind of, they can inquire as to what resource can be available for what, but each one of them either provides really good information about donation. Project Donor actually provides free resources for individuals trying to lose weight or quit smoking in prep for donation. And then the National Living Donor Assistance Center and Donor Shield are the financial resources that we talk about with every donor candidate. Okay, now we're going to switch it back over to Kelly, who is going to walk us through how to create a successful living donor campaign.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, so we're going to get started here with a question. For those of you online, if you wouldn't mind using the little raise hand icon so we can see some hands online, but in person here as well, please raise your hand if you've ever felt uneasy talking about your story or asking help finding a donor. Definitely. And that's a very normal feeling. It's a very vulnerable thing to do. It's not easy. And so the good news is tonight we're going to talk about some tactics and tips and tricks to make it feel more natural and authentic for you, and some strategies that will help you share your story with some confidence. Some goals for my discussion: we're going to understand the role of a living donor champion, which has been hinted a bit by Dr. Jackson and Jamie. Learn how to use storytelling to inspire others. Explore ways to leverage social media for a campaign and methods outside of social media. practice maintaining and managing your donor pool, which is, a whole world of its own, and discuss some common barriers. Of course, I just want to reiterate that these are only suggestions. I know that it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all for everyone, but we have learned from other high-volume transplant centers and from our own patients some methods that do work and have been successful in finding donors for other people. And so we're going to talk about those tactics and hope that you can implement one or many in your own search for a donor. All right, so where to begin? Like I mentioned here, not every strategy will work, but we really want to empower you to share your story and know that you are worthy of receiving a live donor liver transplant or a deceased donor transplant, either one. I know it can feel hopeless. I've never been in your position, but from my experience as a bedside nurse and in transplant most of my career, I know that patients do feel down and hopeless a lot because this is a very cumbersome journey and process to find yourself a donor. But we hope to empower you to know that you're worthy and it is possible. So this living donor champion piece that we've been discussing. So we know that a lot of you do not feel well enough to do this for yourself. And that is a very common thing. It's probably a lot to even get you here tonight. So thank you again for coming. But we're hoping that if you have a trusted family member or a friend in your life that could step forward to help you to become your donor champion, it might take off some of the burden for you to find a donor for yourself. So we do recommend finding and identifying your donor champion as early in the process as possible, but at any point is totally worthwhile. And we also help. Jamie often recommends, so if the donor does step forward for you and we find that they are ineligible to donate for whatever reason, Jamie and my other coordinators encourage those people to maybe become this donor champion if that potential donor is still wanting to do something to help. So those people in your life that maybe step forward that aren't eligible, you could recommend, hey, maybe you could be my donor champion, and we'll talk about kind of what that donor champion does here. So we think donor champions really are valuable in helping write and share messages and updates on your behalf. They are that contact person for people who express interest and might have questions about your story, your liver disease, what you need, how they can help. They can kind of take that communication off for you. And a lot of benefits that we find, it's often easier for others to talk about your story than it is for you to share, because it's obviously very uncomfortable and vulnerable to talk to people about your need. But this person is sort of external, so they can ask and talk about you a little easier than you might be able to talk about yourself. It also helps to expand your network, which is a big piece, because likely if they're a close family member or friend, you might share a lot of a network, but they have people outside of you that you wouldn't have connected with otherwise. So we do put the disclaimer at the bottom that it's a big disclaimer that we understand that not everyone has someone in their life that can serve as the donor champion. So the strategies that we'll discuss today can be done on your own or shared with someone in your life that can champion for you. So expressing your need for a living donor, whether it's yourself or your donor champion, how do you start that conversation? We find it's often best to ask family and friends to share your story rather than directly asking them to be your donor. Why does this work? Well, for a lot of reasons, it takes pressure off of the person you're speaking with, and it takes pressure off of yourself. It allows your message to reach more people, because if that person is engaged in helping you, they will share your message, and it will reach more people than had you just asked, I need a liver, will you be my liver donor? And many recipients have found their donor this way. This is one of the best pieces of advice that we have found from prior recipients and from all of our contacts at other large volume centers, that this question really does hit home and help the message reach farther. So we recommend to share a short elevator speech. So this is sort of a short memorized message to make it easier for you or your champion to talk about you when you meet family, friends, or even strangers. So that strangers piece is a good emphasis, because you might not have all the time in the world in an elevator or at the grocery store, but if you have something like this to share, it might be very impactful. So an example is, I wanted to share that I'm living with liver disease and looking for a living donor so I can get back to enjoying my life with my kids. If you're open to learning more or helping me share my story, I can send you some resources or connect you with my UC Health team. So it's concise, and it really ends with that simple call to action, which you'll see repeated here in my slides. That's the most important part, because that puts the onus on the person to do something. Help me share my story. And practicing ahead of time allows you to feel more ready, because as we've said a million times, it's so vulnerable to do this, and I can't reiterate that enough. So practicing getting in front of the mirror, practicing with family and friends is a great way to feel comfortable to share and ask for help. So let's cover ways of how to reach larger audiences. So this is transitioning into our social media and our print media, or print campaigns, I like to call them. So some other creative tools we'll cover now. So diving into social media, what platforms can you use? There's so many out there, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, formerly known as Twitter. Some recipients even create their own website. How do you choose which one's good for you? It's a great question. So we usually recommend to recipient candidates or their champions to go where your friends and family are most active. Typically, we find with more of our mature crowd, that might be Facebook. For the younger folks, maybe TikTok and Instagram feels more at home. But we want you to really choose a platform that feels natural for you. So not something that feels cumbersome or overwhelming. Something that you use on a daily basis. And like I said, your family and friends are connected there too. For story format, we want you to post something that feels authentic so that you can build connection. Of course, pictures, videos are really captivating. We live in such a short form content world. It's hard to capture people's attention, but pictures and video really do a good job of doing so. And then shareability, so platforms where posts can be easily shared, which is pretty much all of the ones you see at the top. I wouldn't recommend Pinterest or something like that, of course, but most of these platforms can allow your followers to repost and share for you. And lastly, can you choose more than one platform? Of course, the more the merrier. It's great to diversify and get you plugged into a few different locations. If you have the bandwidth or if you have help, that's even better. One question that we hear a lot is, do I need to have a huge social media following to make an impact? And that's absolutely not. I think that if you're plugged into support groups, you might find that some people do go viral. And if your post isn't getting a lot of traction, that might feel very, discouraging. But you do not need to go viral. It just takes one share to really make a difference to find your donor. Going viral obviously will help you reach people in Massachusetts and all over or wherever, but you don't need it to go viral. So don't be discouraged if you're not getting as much traction as maybe others in your networks that you're connected with are. But think about who you're connected with. I think if I had you guys raise your hand, if you know a teacher, if you know someone in the military, things like that, that people that have larger communities, you probably would raise your hand because we all typically know people in those fields, and they can share your post and reach larger audiences of their coworkers, their classmates, things like that. So the basics on creating your campaign. So we definitely want you to include your name first and last if you're comfortable. In previous classes, people have spoken up and said they might not be comfortable to share their full name due to scams and things like that, which we totally understand. You can make an alias with your transplant coordinator. Just please inform them if you're going to go online and post your campaign going by sort of a pseudonym or an alias. So that way we can get that plugged into Epic and Jamie can actually find who the person is that a donor is stepping forward for. But if you're comfortable, name. Pictures are really impactful. We love to have people put pictures of with their family, with their pets, their hobbies, doing things that you used to do when you were healthy, if that's applicable to you. Those really do hit home as well. Share a few details about yourself. So discuss those things, your pets, hobbies, kids, need for a transplant. And most importantly, describing the medical journey in accessible terms with the extent of what you're comfortable with. So you could say, I have advanced liver disease. Most days I'm exhausted dealing with brain fog and nausea, and I haven't been able to work, or I haven't been able to play with my children. Something like that. I think when it comes to discussing the nature of your disease, that can be a very sensitive thing to do. So if you do not feel comfortable describing the nature of your disease, that's okay. You can keep it very vague. Don't feel pressured to put, the reason for your disease if you're not comfortable to do that. And then encourage sharing. So that's that call to action that we talked about before. It's one thing to post all of this and say, hi, my name is John Smith, XYZ, and these first few bullet points. But if you do not do the call to action at the bottom, people might not know how to help you. Some other things, some other tips, post in local community groups, transplant support groups. I know there are a lot of those on Facebook and the like. And utilize AI. Obviously, that's a daunting tool, but there are a lot of free AI platforms that you can just plug in your basic details and ask it to create you a donor campaign, little blurb, and it will do a fabulous job. And you can personalize it, tweak it here and there, but don't be afraid of AI because it really can help you and it doesn't come off inauthentic as long as you put your personal touches on there. And then something that I touched on a little bit, be cautious of scams. We do not want you to provide your phone number, your address, your place of work address, anything like that, because we've had instances where people who step forward, might get a little hairy. So be careful of what you share, but your first and last name is okay. And then the rest, we want you to direct inquiries to our website, our center. Give them our phone number and this link that we've been talking about here, rather than your own personal information. Here's an example, social media post, and like Jamie mentioned, we will share the slides so that you'll have this, but this just kind of goes into who this person is, what he likes to do. He likes to hang out with his 3-year-old son, Brooks, cook, play guitar, spend time with his wife. He was diagnosed with liver disease. He talks about how he feels day to day and what he's missing out on, which is important. And he then gives the call to action. He's raising awareness for liver donation. And if you could share his story, that would be great. He provides our link at the bottom and his first and last name. That way, if someone reaches this post, near or far, they'll know his name, they'll know where he is listed and how they can take the next steps. Or they'll just be implored to share his post. And that beautiful picture here too, you don't need to have professional photography, of course. It could be literally anything, as long as it, highlights you and, something you love to do is always good, or your family is nice as well. So how to keep the momentum going. So you post this and now what is kind of how I would imagine feeling if this were me. So it's important to reshare your posts, as awkward as that might feel. It is important to not just throw one post out there and leave it. We want you to kind of be annoying, post it frequently. At the bottom, we talk about sharing it on meaningful dates if that feels more authentic to you, rather than weekly bombardments in your mind, which it wouldn't be because you need a liver and that's important. But if it feels better, you could share on meaningful dates, birthdays, holidays, transplant awareness days, or even if you've been transplanted before, you could use your transplant anniversary as another time to bring up your need. It's important to update regularly with progress, good or bad, because that will hit home for people to hear kind of what's going on in real time. Short stories are milestones. Engaging with comments and messages in your post, a quick thank you, acknowledgement will help build connection. And you can tag your friends or family or your donor champion when you post, and then that way it gives them a quick and easy, oh, okay, great, John posted, I need to repost his message so that more people hear about his need. And then, of course, the photos and videos are always going to get you a little bit further. So now if social media is not your thing or you want to pair it with a different method, what can you do for that? So there are so many different things, and I have some actual visual examples here. The slide's obviously a little wordy, but you can do signs, flyers, personalized clothing items are a big hit, church bulletins, car magnets, you name it. There are a lot of websites such as FedEx, Etsy, Amazon that can offer personalization, and the options vary in price, of course. Something more affordable like a business card to a billboard, which we've had recipient candidates do. Obviously, a billboard will cost you a few $1,000s, so that's pretty expensive, but we have had previous recipients who have gotten their billboard sponsored by reaching out. And Jorge, which I'll introduce you to Jorge later, but he recently spoke to that gentleman, and it's kind of who you know. So if you might know someone, that can get you any kind of media, then you should reach out. But include as many details as you would in a social media post that will fit on whatever form you're using. So definitely your first and last name, your need for a liver. If it can fit, a photo, some personal details maybe, but definitely our link to our website is important. So here are some examples. We've got a yard sign up here on the left. That's really nice because you could put those all over in front of a small business if you know people that own anything like that. We've got a billboard up here on the right. This one, I actually mocked this up on ChatGPT after a real story that Jamie and I recently heard at a conference. So this gentleman, Joseph, it's not his actual picture, but same story. So Joseph made a billboard. He said he loves to golf, loves his grandkids, and needs a liver. And people driving by, they saw that and they called, and they didn't remember his name, but they remembered, I'm calling on behalf of the grandpa that likes to golf. And so as you see, that really does work to sort of connect with people, especially in the flash in the car. They're going to remember golf and grandpa, and they're going to call, and he found a donor because of his billboard, presumably. And then down below, we have some t-shirts. These are awesome because you can have your friends and family wear them. It will spark natural organic conversation out in public. And then you can pair the t-shirts with something like the top right, maybe a business card. Those are pretty inexpensive. If you have a printer at home, you could even feed some heavier card stock in there and make them yourself for a cheaper alternative. But, you know, a button or a t-shirt would pair really nicely with a business card. So if people do come up to you and ask, you could provide them that. Car signs, we've all seen those likely. I've seen a few out in the world, but those are very effective as well. Providing your name and the phone number of the transplant center is a good idea there. Some other alternatives, you could ask faith communities. So if you're a part of one or a family is a part of one, you could ask them to pop it into their bulletin or in their community room. Local clubs, workplaces, and schools. If you have, you know, school-age children or grandchildren, that's a good idea. And then local newspapers, radio stations, or TV, they love to run human interest stories on these kind of things. And, you know, it just takes reaching out and kind of sharing your story. And then if you frequent, one that we often talk about is if you frequent a restaurant or a small business, say you go to Panera once a week with some girlfriends, ask them to place your flyers or business cards at the entrance or near the restrooms is a good idea. And then have all of your supporters, if you do have those, if you're fortunate to have people like that in your life, to wear any type of merch that you're able to get them with your information so that gets out further. And then something that we talk about is how do you, again, maintain and manage your donor pool. So don't stop recruiting and do your best to keep hope alive. As we've talked about, I know this journey can probably be very discouraging if you're not getting a lot of traction, or you hear about donors that are going through the process and then you don't hear about anything more to do with them. It is probably very discouraging, but keep going. Someone out there, I hope, will be your donor. Have them come to our website. That website obviously links to the donor form, but it also provides them with a lot of information, videos that Jamie and team did a long time ago, not a long time, a few years ago, still relevant, to educate them. And so that's a good place to send people. Again, stay in frequent contact, send updates, express gratitude, and also be prepared for rejection or no response. Since we're on the donor team, you know, we evaluate these people, and 99.9% of the time, if a donor steps forward and then decides to discontinue, it's not personal. People have many valid reasons to not proceed. So we just say that in efforts to hope that you just don't take that personally and allow it to discourage you, because we want you to keep going. So some common barriers that we encounter a lot. So fear of asking and guilt, which is totally understandable. Many patients feel unworthy or afraid to burden their loved ones. Jamie described the living donation process, and we've really streamlined it with the robot and that kind of thing, but it is still a huge ask to ask for a liver. So of course, that's a normal feeling. But again, you are worthy of a life-saving transplant, and that's what we want to instill tonight. Concerned about donor safety. So if you have family or friends that step forward, you might say, oh, I don't want my daughter to step forward because I don't want her to go undergo a major abdominal surgery. Understandable. As Jamie mentioned, donors, though, are thoroughly screened. Surgeries are often robotic, and donor health is always prioritized. So we aren't going to take risks that we don't need to with donors, so they're safe with us. And then financial and logistics concerns, Jamie covered that as well. So we have so many programs and opportunities to offset any costs so that the donor should be cost neutral is our hope. And finally, I'd like to introduce Jorge. Jorge, if you want to stand up and raise your hand. Jorge is our donor champion. So online, you obviously can't see him, but he is here. So Jorge is what we call formally the Living Donor Outreach Coordinator, but In short, we call it the donor champion. His sole responsibility is going to be to help all of you liver and kidney patients, recipient candidates rather, with education just like this in the form of classes more frequently and one-on-one support, which we're really excited about. He just got hired about a month and a half ago. Yeah. And so he's shadowing, learning the basics, and he's a marketer by background. So he's going to offer us a lot of really amazing things and plug you into some resources and help you create your campaigns and personalize them so it feels less daunting to take this on your own. So we're hoping by the fall he'll be up and running, and your transplant coordinators will be communicating this to you once he's ready to work with you all. But we're really excited about having Jorge. So before we go to the post survey, I just want to mention a quick couple of housekeeping things. When you guys leave, when you're in person, please feel free to take some food home. We have a lot of food, and make sure you've signed in. And then online, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We would love to answer your questions. But are there any glaring questions for any of the team members here right now? Yes, so that's a good point. So on the sign-in sheet, there's an option for your email. So if you'd like the slides, please do that in person here. Online, if you're comfortable sharing your email in the chat, please feel free to do so, or you're welcome to log into your UC Health app where I've messaged you too many times. My apologies, but please respond to my message in your UC Health app, and I'll get you the slides if you're interested. Are there any other questions that are coming in online? Not yet. Anybody in person have anything to ask?
I had a question. Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes, we can.
Okay. In reference to basically, I guess, a living donor pool, are we talking the entire country? Should we be focusing within the Front Range area? Is there a suggestion or a better pool that we should be looking at?
Good question. So with living liver donation, sorry, that's always a tongue twister. There aren't national paired exchange programs, but we do evaluate and have donors that come from all places. So if your social media campaign or however you get your word out, if it reaches people in any other state, typically it's confined to the United States because it's difficult to get people here from out of the country. But anywhere can apply, and then they would have to come travel here to be evaluated and to donate, of course, because you are located here. So the surgery would take place here. But a lot of those programs that we talk about in the resource slides, they definitely can reimburse travel and lost wages and that kind of thing, because that would obviously be a bigger ask for someone to travel and childcare and that kind of thing. So there are resources to help offset those costs, and we can evaluate donors from all over the 50 states. Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So you said you should share this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
So the question in person was sharing your campaign frequently or your posts frequently. So, that's kind of up to you. I think most people would probably do every month, I would say, is a good starting place. And you can do more frequently if you want. Like I said, to me, in my mind, if I had a loved one on Facebook or wherever, I'd want you to share it every day. There's never too much, but I think if it feels more comfortable to do it monthly, I would recommend that, and that would give you a better kind of opportunity to share more meaningful progress updates because it won't be so frequent. But it's totally up to you. But just sharing it with some sort of frequency is important. No. You can add to your post, copy and paste, and then just say, sharing this again, a progress update that I have is XYZ. Thank you all for considering, and then just have your normal body of your post, I think is good. Jorge, do you have anything else for that?
So basically we're marketing, and more we market, the higher our chances are to getting a possible liver. Is that correct?
Yes, and I've got my marketer, Jorge, coming up right now.
Thank
to
you.
answer kind of, yes.
Thank you, everyone, for letting me speak. So I guess just to add on to your question, ma'am, really for social media, there's like various ways to reshare. Whether that is the singular post that you created originally, you are welcome just to literally hit the reshare button and use that. My advice would be creating new posts each time is a little better just because new content gets new eyes. And the algorithm itself on all social media platforms tend to push out new posts and new content uploaded as opposed to older ones that have already been created in the past. And just to wrap it up too, you don't have to make a direct post on any social media platform. There's something called a story right now that you are able just to upload something for, I think, 24 hours. And that's just a good way to take a quick picture. It allows you to share clickable links as well. So you can give an update of as to what happened that day, and then maybe even just put the UC Health Living Donor link on there as well, just to kind of keep the frequency of registering the website with your journey. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. It was a pleasure to meet you down there in Colorado, by the way.
Thank you.
Was that James? Thank you, James. Okay, so I'm going to share. Will you pull up the post survey link? Jamie is going to share the post survey link in the chat for those that are online. Please fill that out if you can. That really does help us shape future events to come. There's a comment section to add any feedback for that in that regard. But if you wouldn't mind in person, go ahead and pull your phones out and give me your results for the post survey.
Comfortable with sharing the story after the presentation.
Hmm?
Are you still very comfortable with sharing your information?
All right. Thank you all for taking the survey. That's really helpful. And last but not least, the most exciting part of the night, we're going to go ahead and invite our recipient and donor pair. I usually would pass a mic to you all, but I think I might ask if you wouldn't mind coming up here just because the other one's not working. So we are going to hear from a donor and recipient pair who embody this and it worked for them. So without further ado, would you guys mind coming up? Thank you. Sure, we'll start with Kendra. So we've got Kendra, and Kendra is a recipient.
Hello, everyone. So mine's kind of a long story, so I'm going to try to keep it short. When I was 8 years old, I got really sick, and I was rushed to Children's Hospital and diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And then in my teens, I was diagnosed with a second autoimmune disorder. And my doctors always told me one day I would need a liver transplant. So I always knew I would need one. I got into my 30s and I got really, really sick. So my name was, I got listed on the transplant list, but I was kind of in denial about the living donor part. I just kind of thought, I'll worry about it when I get there. And I got really sick really fast. And it got to the point where I was in the hospital more than I wasn't. And my husband had one time had told me, I want to be your donor, but I wasn't sure whether we would be a match. So I was in the hospital once and the doctors came in and told me, Kendra, you're getting really, really sick. Do you have anybody that can donate to you? And my husband said he wanted to. And they said, we were like, can he be a match? Whether he'd be a match or not. So we went ahead and placed an ad on Facebook. And I didn't even place an ad. I just put it on my Facebook page. And I had a couple people who right away were interested in being a donor. But in the meantime, my husband matched. So he matched. I had a transplant in 2014. However, that's not the end of my story, unfortunately. So with my disease, there's a very rare chance of reoccurrence. And I had a reoccurrence. And I ended up having a transplant 8 years later, but I knew on the second one I had enough knowledge from the first one to learn how to be better equipped to find a donor. So I did Facebook. I do not have a lot of money. I do not have a special knowledge using Facebook. You know, I just got on there and I started by sharing my story. I just started sharing with friends and they shared my story. And I had a couple friends test and a family member and none of it worked out. So then I just made a Facebook page, which is pretty similar to just yours, but I made just a specific page. And I started getting people to share that and share and share and share. And I also did a little bit of advertising and I tried some different, so like I would do, like you guys saw up here, like the long post. I do some shorter posts and I was testing which ones worked. And you can see on there like how many people have seen an ad and how many people have, you know, commented on it. So I did bring, and I know for a lot of you online, you won't be able to see it, but I can give it to Jamie and I'd be more than happy for her to share it with you. But this one that I brought really worked great. So I just want to mention a few things that I thought worked really well. So I have a picture of me, my husband, and my 2 kids. And that really responded with a lot of people. So I recommend, and like I said, I only used Facebook. I did not spend very much money on this. You know, even if you don't have kids, if you have grandkids, if you have dogs, if you have cats, just something so somebody sees you that really hits people. So, you know, I use that. And then, you know, I used my name. I said I was a mother of 2. I wrote on there, I was diagnosed with a non-alcoholic liver disease because a lot of people, for whatever reason, were concerned about that. So that's also in my post. You know, when I was all said and done, my donor ended up being from California. So he came all the way from California. He has got 3 children. Well, he had 2 and his wife was pregnant at the time. And he ended up finding my post from a friend of mine who posted it. So, you know, at the end of the day, that's what got us here. But I will tell you, I had lots of people who were interested, a lot of people who didn't match, some people who matched and chickened out. But I really believe anybody can find a match. You would be surprised how many, maybe you'd be surprised, maybe you won't, but I was surprised by how many complete strangers had wanted to jump right in. But when it was all said and done, I talked to Jamie and she told me I had one of the most successful number of people who came forward wanting to donate. So in the end, I had no idea how successful it was, but she said it was one of the most successful. So I really believe like just using Facebook. So I think the thing is you have to try to get friends to help you, ask them to share. And like her question, do you post a lot? You know, what I would do is I would post when I was in the hospital. I take a picture of myself in the hospital and say, hey, I'm in the hospital again, and these are the tests they're doing. And you just get people, see, and just tell people how much, you know, your family means to you, how much you mean to you, and, you know, just keep doing things like that. But ultimately, like, getting other friends to help was a big deal. And I don't have a lot of friends. I don't on Facebook. I don't have a large family. And I really believe that, you know, I really believe using Facebook can work for anybody. So I'm going to leave this for Jamie. If anybody, I have a bunch for people here, but anybody online, I'll just email her the post. But does anybody have any questions? I feel like I have so much to say, but I hope I kind of got the point through. Does anybody have any questions? That's a So like I'd have like my family and friends I knew were testing, and then I would have like some people reach out and be like, hey, I'm in the testing process. So I actually didn't know. There were tons of other people in the background, but when you're a donor, when you're a possible donor, they really keep your information private for them, for one. So I honestly had no idea all that was going on until it was all said and done. So yeah, I didn't know about most of them that were testing. Does that answer your question?
Not necessarily have.
So like my posts would have, I don't know if this answers your question either, but like my posts would have like a link, like they were saying, where like they click and then they just fill out a form. But yeah, like I would, if people wanted to reach out to me, they could, and some people did. But I was actually surprised how many people I didn't even know. So there will be people that you might not know if you're having your direct link go to them. Now, if you're telling them to call you or a friend or something, then yeah, you would know. But I just had them go directly to the UC Health website.
So the link will take you to a bucket, and it's one bucket, and every single questionnaire that is in there will get reviewed by a coordinator.
So you guys potentially already have a pool. Donate,
To a specific recipient or to somebody in general?
just in general. You gotta
Yes.
Repeat the question.
Oh, it's for online. So the question is, if we just have a bucket of people that maybe don't have a recipient in mind, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, we do have a small subset of the population we call the non-directed donors, and they do step forward to say, I am interested in living donation for liver. I don't know anybody that's listed for liver disease, but I would like to help someone. All of those individuals go through the same thorough and thoughtful evaluation process that all of our directed donors do. And then if we're able to approve that individual, then we have a system for allocating that organ to a person on the wait list. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other kind of comment is, somebody does a social media campaign, they've had patients who 50 people come forward to donate. And you think, okay, well, what about the other 49? They must have donated so many. It doesn't end up working out that way. For about every 50 people, maybe we'll get one that hangs around and will donate to anybody. So it's not as big as you might idealistically hope it would be. But honestly, the way that we look at it is every one non-directed donor is helping other people on the wait list. It's another organ that goes into that pool and it means another organ is available for other people. And then you kind of brought up that idea that as a recipient, you're putting your story out there and you don't always know what's going on the backside. I think that is particularly extremely challenging for people. And there aren't easy fixes to this. I just want to kind of emphasize why it feels so.
Oh, and I understood too. I think what I'm trying to express to people is like when you do this, like you'd be surprised. So like I was thinking, oh, nobody is reading my posts anymore, but there actually were a lot of people actually testing. And so, don't give up, just keep sharing, keep asking your friends to share because, and I understand why, you got to keep their information private. Plus it is disappointing when somebody doesn't match. So, I mean, in a way it's nice to maybe not know when somebody didn't match because that was difficult. So, but in the end it worked out. So, and I think it can for everyone.
Amazing approach to it to
Yeah.
just stay positive. Some people get frustrated because they don't know. They've heard that somebody might be doing it. The way that we look at it is that a donor deserves that space to go through the evaluation process to decide if it's truly right for them. And if we were to like update a recipient on every status, that would be taking that like space and privacy away from them.
Yeah, and
And it's not always the right decision for everyone, and they don't always know how to express that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, like if my patient were trying to get a living donor, I'm always the last to know. Usually my patient tells me because like the donor goes and tells them, and then I find out last, sort of thing. So there's just this protected area just so that they can make sure it's the right decision, because it's a big abdominal surgery,
Yeah,
and we're just trying to
absolutely.
respect that. I mean, you're at the right place to be doing this. You're at the right place to get this surgery. You are going to get taken care of so well. Everyone's going to pour their heart and soul into you.
Yeah.
But just, that I think that's hard to be not knowing what's happening in the background.
I also just wanted to comment on, I know it's, at first I did not want to share my story at all. Like, I'm a very private person. My husband was like, I mean, this is the difference between living, or not living. He's like, just get your feet wet, just do it. And once I did it, like, I had so much positive feedback. Then the second time you do it, and it becomes easier, but at the end of the day, I've had 2 transplants and I'm doing awesome. So just keep the faith and keep on plugging away. You're in a good place here. They've taken good care of me.
Thank you, Kendra. That's amazing. All right, we would love to introduce Ray, Kendra's live donor.
All right, good evening. So my name is Ray, and I was Kendra's living donor, and I did notes on my phone, and I'm going to do my best to follow along with those. But also before I start, one of the things that I kind of wanted to add, which I'm not sure if that was the direction you were going, but one of the things that Jamie made sure to point out to me when I was going through the process is if for some reason I wasn't a good fit for Kendra, but I still wanted to move forward, that they would help with aligning me with somebody new. So there's not really this concern of somebody is able and willing, and then they're not getting, they're not getting the opportunity. So she made sure to discuss that with me and make sure that I was okay with donating to somebody else that may need it. So it's not like there's people going to waste out there. All right, so to start off with, Kendra, I found Kendra through a social media campaign that was shared by a mutual friend of ours. I didn't know Kendra, but we have a mutual friend who's back here, Jackie, and Jackie shared her post. I didn't ask if I could use your name, but I'm assuming we're okay. So Jackie shared the post, and that's how I came across it. And Kendra did a great job of marketing herself, because now the other thing is my notes. I didn't know what else was going to be presented, and a lot of what I was going to talk about has already been covered. So I'm gonna mix this up a little bit. But Kendra, one of the things she pointed out, like she said, is that she was a wife, or is a wife, and a mother. And as a husband and a father, that was really easy for me to empathize with. It was very easy for me to put myself in her shoes or her husband's shoes, and really want somebody to be willing to step forward. So again, you did a great job of that, and Jackie, great job of sharing the post. So really leveraging what you can do with social media and how it just exponentially multiplies your message. So why I decided to donate? Well, again, she did a great job of marketing herself. And again, if I were in her situation or John's situation, I would want somebody to do the same thing for me. So that's what really kind of pushed me forward. But in addition to that, it's such a unique opportunity. Like, if you think about it, just how many people can say that they directly contributed to extending somebody's life? It's one of those things. I was in the Army when I was younger, and to have an opportunity to do that in the Army usually means you have to give up your own. So the fact that I could have an opportunity to do this and I didn't have to die myself, I'm like, hey, that's a bonus, right? Let's do it that way. And then also just curiosity. I think the process in general, I was really curious about, and I had no idea that being a living donor was a thing. I just thought that deceased donors, there was plenty of them. And if somebody needed a transplant, it was there for them. So I didn't realize that gap that Dr. Jackson had talked about earlier. I didn't realize that was there. So I was just kind of finding out about this. So my next one, my journey through donation, I think has already been covered very thoroughly as far as what happens. So I don't have much more to add to that. The only thing that I will say is that for those here that work within the program, to Jamie, Kelly, Dr. Jackson, anyone else that's in here, that you guys do an amazing job. And when I came out to do the 2 days of testing, it went so smoothly that it actually increased my confidence. Like, I think it's probably usual or common to have anxiety and be stressed out over this. The closer it got, the more kind of anxiety and stress I started to have. But when I came out here and I saw just like, I think Jamie pointed out, there's anywhere from like 9 to 10, 11 different appointments that you go to over a 2-day span. And it's not like you're sitting in a room and everybody's coming in to you. You're going all over this campus, which sounds like a headache, but it wasn't. It was a very smooth process, and so smooth that it increased my confidence. And whatever concerns that I did have were kind of tossed out with that. That's how much it increased my confidence. I will also say that one of the things I had to do, I think not quite everybody has to do this, but due to some of my labs, I had to have a biopsy done on my liver. And the process for that is that they stab your liver with a needle. There's a little bit more to it than that, but and I have to give a shout out to Dr. Jackson back there, because the process itself, you're kind of in a strange pose because they have to be able to get in there to do it. It was probably the most relaxing procedure I've ever had. There was like three other, her and 2 people assisting her. I think there was some like classical music playing. You know, so such a good, you know, so much better than what I was expecting. So so then again, now I'm kind of off my notes a little bit, but I also want to say that I think that Jamie is in the role that she was born to play, or born to be in, because that was the other thing, is as I was going through each step, everything from doing labs to, you know, every step of the way, that it would continue on with getting a phone call from Jamie. But it wasn't like just a normal, you know, phone call. Every time I would answer, she would always hit me with this energetic, "Hey, Ray." And it was one of those things where like it kind of it helped me to match her level of motivation. So she is outstanding at what she does. And yeah, so kind of just giving shout outs here. I'll wrap it up with like what does this mean to me? So for those of you that are looking for living donors, what is it? Well, actually, so how I'm doing now, doing great. If it weren't for the big scar, I probably wouldn't even you know, wouldn't be able to tell that I did it. And I think John probably agrees that we're a little bit jealous of the yeah.
He knows we do them robotically now.
Yeah, which I think you guys started in 23 and mine was in 22. So I think I just kind of missed that. But you know, if not for the scar, I wouldn't have, there's nothing else that makes me, that my life has not changed in any other way physically or health wise because of that. So, so no long lasting effects. I think as of my last imaging, my liver was 103% my original size. So now my liver is bigger than it was when I started. And then as a living donor, it's one of the most rewarding things, and this does kind of go back to marketing, but you know, Kendra and I stay in contact. We message each other often. And I have an opportunity to see her kids growing, and it's just such an amazing feeling to know that I got to play a role in that. And so again, that kind of goes to the marketing. yourself thing, whatever it is, whether it's kids, spouse, dogs, cats, a love of golf, cars, whatever it is, find something that you enjoy or that has a following, because there's probably going to be somebody that speaks to directly. So I would encourage you to do that. And then finally, just that I feel honored to be a part of this. I feel honored that we had a friend that shared it, that took the time and effort to share the post. I feel honored that this program worked as smoothly as it did to help me out and to get me to keep me motivated and keep me going. And of course, I definitely appreciate friends that helped out along the way. I have a friend here that came in to check on me. The only thing that I'll say that I wish that I now know I should have done different is, as I am from out of state, and I, in my infinite wisdom, I told any family and friends that I have locally to wait for me to get out of the hospital to come visit. It turns out you really need to have somebody when you're in recovery. My surgery was on a Wednesday, and I discharged on a Monday, and I remember about 20 minutes of that because I was sleeping most of the time. Now, the medical staff did a great job. They did everything that they should have done, and they were taking care of me. But I needed people to motivate me to even have discussions, to get up and to walk. And fortunately, even though it wasn't planned, we did have a friend that stopped in and did that for me. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I got. And then I already gave my shout out to Dr. Jackson, but I think this is also because of her. I am part of a collaborative, and we call ourselves the Liver Givers. And our goal is to raise awareness of living organ donation and encourage those interested in potentially being living donors to ask questions and to take the next step if that's something that they're interested in. We have Facebook, so I think you could look up the Liver Givers on Facebook and Instagram. And we've been a little bit quiet, but we're working on getting that back up and moving. So that's all I have. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And otherwise, if you run into me afterwards and you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to share anything that I can with you. I wish you all the best of luck too.
All right. Thank you so much to both Ray and Kendra. We're honored to have you. Kendra came up from Pueblo, and as you heard, Ray is from California. So he flew in to be here with us tonight. So we're very appreciative of that, and for being willing to share your story. So thank you. Thank you. If there are there any questions? Okay, no questions in the chat. So again, online, please drop your email if you would like the slides sent to you. Sign out in the front if you're in person and you would like that. Please take food with you, and I appreciate you all for joining us near and far, and hopefully we will be doing a lot more of these soon once Jorge is up and running. So have a great night. Thank you all.
Like logistically, if we put thing out there, a living donor, and somebody fills out the thing for an Alan Johnson, how do you know him versus someone else? No, do we have to sign up? How do we do it?
Looks like we still have one person left online. So the question was if the wife, I'm assuming, I shouldn't have assumed. Okay, yes. The wife of a recipient candidate posts a campaign online for her husband. His name is John Smith, let's say. How do we know that when someone steps forward for John Smith that it belongs to the John Smith here we're speaking of?
So the donor team and the recipient team do work very closely. So if there's not a name tied to a specific date of birth where I can pull them up and say, oh, that is absolutely a two identifier, that is the individual, then we go through great lengths to make sure that we have the right person. And that is either through discussions with the recipient team, if there's two John Smiths, or most of the time there's only one person listed with that name for a liver transplant. On the recipient wait list, yeah, there, I don't even know if there's been one circumstance where there's been two identical names. But we do go through great lengths to make sure that we know we have the right recipient. Yes, historically, that is enough. Yes.
That's something we.
So the question is, if the recipient is, say in this example, a tall man, and they're worried about finding donors that are an appropriate size, do they put that in their post? We encourage you to put less restrictive information in your post, and you let the donor team really tease out if that's going to be compatible or not. The reality is, we don't know what the liver volume is going to be until we scan the donor. And sometimes people have largers much larger than we anticipate them to have, or sometimes they have livers that are smaller. Generally speaking, that is largely true. Somebody who is 6'4" is most likely going to have a larger liver volume than somebody who's 5'4". But we definitely do not make assumptions and rule people out based on the fact that there is a 5'4" female wanting to donate to a 6'2" male. So what? I'm sorry.
Like donor on the wings, maybe.
Donor on the wings, or the people that, like the non-directed donors, the people. So I think he's asking questions about people that are willing but couldn't donate to their specific individual. I think we're combining maybe two ideas of a non-directed donor, somebody who steps forward and says, I don't know anyone listed for liver transplant, but I would like to help someone. We actually have one of the largest populations in the country of individuals that step forward to do that. Versus the person who wants to donate to you specifically, say, but can't for whatever reason, goes to the Donor on the Wings program. The non-directed? Okay. Dr. Jackson could probably speak better to that. Go ahead. Hold on, so we can have the people online here. 1 second, Dr. Jackson's going to answer that question.
I mean, generally speaking, non-directed donors are going to be allocated to the wait list the same way that a deceased donor would be. So it's going to be based on blood type, like severity of illness, the MELD score. And the other thing is that's really important here is size. So you were saying, you know, the size of liver that the recipient needs is really proportional to how big they are, right? So most of our non-directed donor experience is people that come forward and they actually are giving just tiny pieces of liver. And so that actually often has gone to babies in the past. That's why it's hard to feel like, so these little livers go to babies, petite females. Every once in a while, we'll have a piece of liver that's large enough for an adult, but I don't want you to just kind of think that that's automatically going to happen for you because it's really rare and far between to have a big enough living donor for like an adult male or something like that, I would say. That's why we just want to like get you engaged in getting your word and your story out because it's just rare and few and far between. What was the other thing? Oh, the allocation. Yeah, I think that's it, right?
Did that answer your question?
It's a good question.
It is really special. I mean, I keep thinking like even one non-directed donor makes such a difference. But when you're waiting for an organ transplant, we want to try everything and be so proactive.
Any other questions?
Well, we'll wrap up. Thank you all for your attention tonight. Please take a plate to go. And thank you for joining online. Where's my mouse?